Before we begin, imagine standing alone on an alien world, facing something so dangerous that even battle-hardened mercenaries refuse to track it. Would you dare to approach it if it was wounded? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more spine-chilling human versus apex predator stories, smash that like button and subscribe right now. Now, let's dive in. Jace Renner adjusted the seal on his respirator, trying to ignore the way his breath echoed inside the mask. The sulphurous mist of Kelsar 9 clung to everything, thick as curdled milk, coating his visor in a greasy sheen. He wiped it with the back of his glove, revealing faint silhouettes of gnarled vine trees ahead, their bark luminous with faint teal bioluminescence. The jungle was silent except for the distant skitter of unseen insects, each click and scrape reverberating in the gloom like a warning. He took another cautious step forward, boots sinking half an inch into damp black soil. His wrist display pulsed with hazard notifications. Elevated ammonia pockets, sporadic electromagnetic pulses, possible microquakes. He muted them all. He already knew the risks. The real danger wasn't coded in neat yellow or red alerts. It lurked ahead, bleeding quietly somewhere in this toxic forest. Jace's heart hammered as he remembered the shredded remains of an automated drone he'd found an hour ago, its titanium casing twisted like wet paper. The data it had transmitted before its destruction confirmed what he'd come to study. The apex predator of Kelsar 9 was nearby. Locals called it the KAP, or simply the death cat, although it wasn't feline in any terrestrial sense. 12 feet tall at the shoulder, scales like layered obsidian, quills that shimmered with plasma charge when agitated. No confirmed captures. No survivors. Only blurry footage, shattered equipment, and shredded bones. Yet here he was, alone, tracking it on foot with nothing but a medpack, a research drone, and his stubborn sense of duty. "Come on, Jace," he muttered under his breath. "Just get a sample. You don't have to die today." His boots rustled over a carpet of moss that glowed faintly under the mist. Then he saw it, a dark spatter trailing along a cluster of blade grass, each droplet iridescent under his torch. Blood. Alien blood, dense and viscous, the same as on the shattered drone. He exhaled a trembling breath. The predator was wounded. That explained its erratic movement signatures picked up by his satellite sweep earlier. He knelt and ran a gloved finger through the blood. Still warm. Instinct screamed to leave. A wounded predator was infinitely more dangerous, desperate, unpredictable. But the scientist in him, the part that once spent sleepless nights dissecting xenobacteria under a flickering lab lamp, pushed him forward. This could be his only chance to gather live data on a creature that terrified even heavily armed survey teams. If he returned empty-handed, funding for his next cycle would evaporate. Worse, his dream of publishing his own volume in the Xenobiology Hall would be over. He followed the trail deeper into the mist, past tangled roots and bulbous fungi that pulsed with amber light at his passing. His wrist scanner flickered with proximity alarms. 30 meters ahead. 20. 10. The blood trail ended at the gaping mouth of a limestone cave partially hidden behind a draping curtain of vine weed. He paused, listening. Nothing but silence, thick and smothering. Jace swallowed hard. He tapped his wrist console, deploying his spherical research drone. Its rotors spun silently, lifting it into the cave with infrared and LiDAR sensors active. He watched its data feed overlay his visor. Jagged walls. Moisture drips. Then the drone scanners painted a massive heat signature curled at the rear. His pulse surged. There it was. He switched the drone's camera to visual mode and saw it clearly for the first time. Even lying down, the predator's bulk dwarfed any terrestrial big cat. Its scales gleamed like oiled basalt under the drone's spotlight, each quill flattened along its spine. Its long tail lay limp over the stone floor, twitching weakly near the tip. As the drone hovered closer, Jace saw the wound. A massive crystalline shard impaled just below its shoulder blade, pulsing with faint blue energy. The entry wound was blackened and cracked with radiating fissures, leaking dark blood onto the stone. He felt sick. That shard wasn't natural. It was likely a defensive growth from one of the cave's crystal fungus colonies, which meant it was poisonous. Left untreated, the predator would die. And if it died here, in this remote cave, no one would ever recover the body before scavengers shredded it to bone. Another chance at studying it gone forever. His drone's feed showed the creature's eyes flicker open. Emerald green, vertical slits contracting against the light. It raised its head weakly, lips pulling back to reveal rows of jagged ivory teeth. The drone sensors registered a sudden spike in electromagnetic charge around its quills. It tried to rise but collapsed under its own weight, teeth clacking as it snarled in pain. Jace's knees trembled. He could walk away. He should walk away. He was a xenobiologist, not a combat medic for Deathworld apex predators. But as he watched its sides heave, a choked whine escaping its throat, something twisted inside him. It wasn't fear this time. It was recognition. He saw an animal dying alone, terrified in agony. Its scales rippled with tension, but its eyes never left his drone, the pupils dilating then narrowing again as if fighting to focus. He remembered his father's voice back on Earth, deep and calm as he taught him to suture wounds on sedated jaguars at the wildlife rescue clinic. It's pain that makes them dangerous, Jace. Treat the pain, treat the fear. Jace withdrew his drone, letting it hover by the cave mouth. He pulled out his medpack, checked the remaining nanite syringes and chemical sealants. Barely enough. His fingers curled around the hilt of his small emergency shock baton. Useless against something this size, but it was the only thing he had. He stepped through the vines, the alien mist curling around his suit as he entered the cave. The predator's eyes tracked him instantly. Its pupils contracted to slits, and it growled, so deep and resonant the stone walls vibrated under his boots. He froze. For a long moment, neither moved. Then it dropped its head to the floor, breathing raggedly, and its gaze softened just enough for him to see it was barely conscious. Slowly, trembling, Jace approached. Each footfall echoed too loudly. He spoke softly, though he knew it probably couldn't understand words. Easy, easy there, big guy. I'm not here to hurt you. He crouched beside the shard. The crystalline toxin had already spread, discoloring scales around the wound. He felt his breath hitch in horror. The only chance was to extract it cleanly before the fissures reached its cardiovascular nodes. He set down his medkit, retrieving the injector of null-pain nanites and the shard extractor clamps. His hands shook so violently he almost dropped them. The predator lifted its head weakly and exhaled a low, rattling breath, warm and tinged with sulfur, misting his visor. He felt the urge to run so strong his vision narrowed to black around the edges. But then he locked eyes with it, seeing only confusion and pain, not hatred. He swallowed back bile, steeled his resolve, and placed his gloved hand gently on its scorched scales. Its quills bristled faintly, heat crackling between them, but it didn't lash out. Please, he whispered, voice trembling as he loaded the injector, don't kill me for this. He pressed the nanite syringe into the wound's edge. The creature snarled, muscles rippling as the nanites entered its bloodstream, neutralizing nerve signals around the shard. Its breathing calmed by a fraction. Then, with painstaking care, Jace slid the extractor clamps onto the crystalline spike. Every second stretched into eternity as he tightened the clamps, feeling the vibrations of the predator's pain through the metal. Finally, he jerked the shard free in a single smooth motion. Blood, dark and glittering like mercury, spilled down its flank. He slammed the sealant injector into the wound, foam hissing as it expanded and hardened to staunch the flow. The predator roared in agony, quills flaring with incandescent plasma. Jace fell backwards, scrambling away on all fours, expecting teeth to close around his torso at any second. But the roar faded into a guttural panting. The predator slumped forward, breathing shallow and fast, its quills slowly dimming to dull blue. It lifted its head weakly, eyes meeting his in the dim cave light. Its gaze was different now, not just of pain but recognition. Awareness. For a long moment, neither moved. Then it let out a low vibrating rumble that resonated in his bones, not quite a growl, not quite a purr. It shifted, testing its wounded limb, then with immense effort, it rose to stand at its full towering height. Jace pressed against the cave wall, heart hammering so hard he felt faint. The predator regarded him silently, tail flicking once in the sulphurous air. Then it lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring as it inhaled his scent through the respirator. Its eyes narrowed to slits, and it let out a single chuffing exhale that smelled of ozone and blood. Without another sound, it turned and limped out of the cave, vanishing into the thick silver fog. Jace slumped to his knees, gasping for breath, the extractor clamps still clenched in his white-knuckled grip. His entire body shook from adrenaline and terror and something else he couldn't name. Relief, wonder, horror. All tangled together in a mind-numbing cocktail. He looked down at his trembling hands, then back at the cave entrance where the mist curled and swirled in the creature's wake. What the hell just happened? He whispered into the silent cave, his voice thin and ragged under the respirator. He didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. Jace sat by the cave wall for a long time, staring at the rippling mist where the predator had vanished. His breathing was ragged inside the respirator, each inhale rasping painfully against his throat. He forced himself to move, to catalog the blood samples quickly before they dried into useless black crusts on the stone. His hands trembled so hard he nearly dropped a vial. Even as he worked, his mind replayed the moment its massive eyes locked with his, the flash of recognition, the low vibrating rumble that felt like it rattled his bones. He didn't know what it meant. He only knew he was still alive. Outside, the sulphurous dawn was rising, casting the jungle in bruised violet and sickly gold light. As he stepped through the cave's vine curtain, he paused and looked down at the trampled moss where the creature's claws had torn grooves into the earth. Blood still glistened between the moss tufts, soaking into the acidic soil. He knelt and scraped a final sample into his vial, watching the viscous dark fluid swirl under the sealed cap. His mind should have been racing with hypotheses about its biochemistry, toxin resistance, healing factor, and possible neural architecture capable of recognizing him as a non-threat. Instead he felt empty, hollowed out. He exhaled slowly and turned back towards his camp beacon, its faint green glow pulsing through the drifting fog. His step felt heavy. The adrenaline crash hit him like a falling stone, sending waves of nausea through his gut. By the time he reached his camp perimeter, his respirator filters were clogged with sulfur residue, and he had to switch to emergency intake just to keep his head clear. He paused outside his habitat dome, staring at his reflection in the curved steel door. His visor was streaked with predator blood and sulfur dust, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. He didn't recognize himself. Inside, he stripped off his EVA suit and collapsed into his desk chair, letting the cool recycled air soothe his burning skin. The small research station hummed quietly around him, a cocoon of stale warmth and humming electronics. He reached out and tapped the record function on his desk console. Research log day 12, Kelsar 9, he croaked, his voice hoarse. Subject KAP. Direct contact established. Subject injured by crystalline fungal shard. Removed shard, administered null-pain nanites, sealed wound. Subject remained conscious throughout procedure. No aggressive retaliation. Repeat, no aggression during invasive field treatment. He paused, staring at his trembling fingers. Subject displayed behavior indicative of comprehension, recognition, possibly gratitude. His throat closed up, emotion rising like bile. He slammed the record stop button and leaned forward, resting his forehead against the console's edge. His pulse pounded in his ears, thunderous and unsteady. "You're losing it, Jace," he whispered. "It's an apex predator. It would have eaten you alive if it could stand." But he couldn't erase the image of its eyes softening as he pulled the shard free, or the way it lowered its head towards him before leaving the cave. A chime sounded from his wrist console, snapping him from his spiraling thoughts. Incoming orbital transmission. He tapped it open and a grainy holoscreen flickered into life above his desk. Two figures appeared, Dr. Veshin, his research sponsor, and Commander Rukor, Council Security Liaison. Both stared at him with inscrutable expressions. "Mr. Renner," Veshin clicked in his precise, insectoid voice. "We are reviewing your drone's body cam footage. Can you confirm this is unaltered data?" Jace forced himself upright. "Confirmed. Unaltered. Timestamp and molecular tags intact." Commander Rukor, the massive feline humanoid, leaned forward, his amber eyes narrowing. "You extracted an embedded shard from the KAP's thoracic region without sedation. Explain." Jace swallowed, throat dry as ash. It was dying. If it died, there would be no way to recover the body before decomposition or scavenging destroyed viable tissue samples. "I had to." Rukor's ears flattened. "You had to treat a Death World apex predators wound with your bare hands?" Jace clenched his fists under the desk. "Yes." Silence settled over the comm line, filled only by the faint buzz of orbital relays. Finally, Veshin shifted, his mandibles clacking softly in what Jace had learned was a gesture of contemplation. "Your actions were unexpected," he said. "Humans continue to demonstrate behavioral divergence from standard risk analysis models." Rukor snorted, a low rumble that vibrated through the speakers. "Behavioral divergence. Call it what it is, Doctor. Madness." Veshin tilted his head, multifaceted eyes glittering. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is precisely this madness that allowed humans to domesticate apex predators on their own world. Wolves. Big cats. Even bears in some regions." Jace closed his eyes. He didn't want to hear philosophical debates about human nature right now. His hands still stank of blood and crystal toxin. All he wanted was to sleep, to pretend none of this had happened. Continue monitoring the subject, Veshin ordered. If it returns, attempt non-invasive behavioral data collection. Do not engage further without council authorization. Understood. Yes, doctor, Jace whispered. The holoscreen flickered out, leaving him alone with the soft hum of his station systems. He sat there for a long time, staring at the blood flecks drying on his gloves. Outside his small viewport, the sulfur fog thickened as evening approached, swirling around the jungle's twisted silhouette in pale, ghostly coils. He forced himself to his feet and stripped off his gloves, scrubbing his hands raw under the sanitizer spray until the faint scent of iron and toxin faded. Then he moved to his bunk, collapsing onto the narrow cot without removing his underlayers. His body ached in every joint, exhaustion pulling at his limbs like gravity. But sleep didn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw its wound, saw the blackened fissures spreading under its scales. Saw its eyes meeting his, not with hatred or hunger but with something deeper. Something older. Recognition. Understanding. Hours later, the camp lights dimmed to their programmed night cycle. Jace lay staring up at the curved steel ceiling, listening to the muted thrum of air recyclers and distant alien screeches filtering through the dome walls. He wondered if it was still out there, limping through the sulphurous mist, wondering about him in return. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him, dragging him into fitful sleep filled with half-formed dreams. In one, he stood in the cave again, holding the crystalline shard in his blood-soaked hands. In another, he felt the creature's warm breath against his chest as it lowered its massive head towards him, eyes luminous with something he couldn't name. In the darkness, a soft alarm began pulsing from his wrist console, unnoticed in his dreams. External motion detection perimeter breach. Heavy bipedal contact. 10 meters outside his habitat dome. But Jace didn't wake. Not yet. Outside, the sulphurous mist curled and parted as a massive shadow settled silently beside his dome, emerald eyes glowing softly in the alien night. Jace woke to darkness and the faint hiss of recycled air. For a moment he didn't know where he was. The thin blanket tangled around his legs felt like a snare, and the humming vibration under his bunk reminded him of the troop carrier he'd taken to Kelsar 9, crammed shoulder to shoulder with other researchers trying to pretend they weren't terrified of Deathworld deployment. He sat up slowly. His neck cracked with the movement, muscles stiff from sleeping in his underlayers. The dim blue glow of the night cycle lit the habitat dome in cold shadows. He rubbed his face and blinked at the flashing orange alert on his wrist console. External motion detected. Heavy bipedal contact. Timestamp, 2 hours ago. His stomach dropped. 2 hours. He'd slept right through it. He tapped the console, pulling up external camera feeds. Grainy infrared footage flickered to life above his wrist. At first he saw nothing but drifting mist and the blurred outlines of vine trees in the jungle's edge. Then movement caught his eye. He adjusted the focus. There it was. Massive. Hulking. The apex predator stood just outside the dome's perimeter, its emerald eyes glowing like twin beacons in the dark. It wasn't pacing or stalking. It simply stood there, facing his habitat, unmoving except for the flick of its tail slicing lazy arcs through the mist. Jace's heart hammered so hard he felt dizzy. He pulled his legs free from the blanket and stumbled to his feet, bare toes curling against the chilled metal floor. The predator remained still on the feed. Watching. He grabbed his EVA suit from the storage alcove, fumbling with the seals. Part of him screamed to stay inside, to call orbit security, to wait for sunrise and hope it wandered off. But another part, deeper and older, urged him forward. The part that had walked into a cave to save a dying apex predator without thinking of his own survival. He slipped on the suit and sealed his respirator, then hesitated at the habitat door. He could see its massive silhouette through the frosted viewport. 12 feet tall at the shoulders. Quills dim in sleep mode. Head lowered but eyes still glowing with that unearthly light. Jace tapped the manual override, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Sulfur-laced mist curled around his boots, swirling in little ghostly eddies as he stepped outside. The chill bit at his cheeks where the respirator seals didn't cover fully. He moved slowly, each step crunching faintly on the frost-hardened moss. The predator's eyes tracked his movement instantly. It didn't growl or shift its weight. Just watched. He stopped 3 meters away. Up close, its size became overwhelming again. The domed crown of its head rose above him like a living cliff, obsidian scales glinting with scattered droplets of mist. Its chest rose and fell with slow, thunderous breaths that ruffled his suit's loose seams. He forced himself to speak, voice muffled behind the respirator. "Why are you here?" The creature blinked once, its pupils contracting to slits before widening again. Its massive shoulders shifted as it lowered its head slightly, bringing its eyes level with his. The faint sulfur fog drifted around its muzzle, lit eerily by its emerald gaze. Jace felt a tremor pass through his legs. He wanted to run. His instincts screamed for it. But he forced himself to stay rooted in place, chest heaving with rapid breaths. He raised his hand slowly, palm open and fingers spread. The predator sniffed at his outstretched hand, the exhale from its nostrils warm and tinged with iron and ozone. Then it leaned forward further, its muzzle brushing against his glove with feather-light pressure. The contact sent a violent shiver down his spine. Every instinct shrieked that teeth would follow. But none came. Instead, it chuffed softly, a vibrating exhale that rustled his hair inside the helmet. For a moment, the fog, the darkness, the entire alien jungle fell away. There was only this towering creature and the trembling human before it, bound by something he didn't fully understand. He lowered his hand to its neck, feeling the heat radiating through the armored scales. It flinched at first, then relaxed into his touch, its eyes sliding closed. His wrist console buzzed, startling him. He glanced down and saw an incoming orbital transmission override. He tapped to answer. The flickering holoscreen projected from his forearm, showing Dr. Veshin and Commander Rukor once again. Their eyes widened in unison at the image feed from his suit camera. "You're outside," Veshin clicked sharply. "With the subject." "Yes," Jace whispered. Rukor leaned in, his feline ears twitching in what Jace had come to recognize as barely contained alarm. "Is it attacking you?" "No." Veshin's mandibles clacked in quiet agitation. "Describe its behavior." Jace swallowed, throat dry despite the humid mist. It's like a wolf recognizing the medic that pulled a thorn from its paw. It's not threatening me. It's watching over me." The two council officials exchanged a glance. Rukur's ears flattened against his skull. "That is not protective behavior. It is assessing you as prey." Jace shook his head. "No. It could have killed me when I removed the shard. It didn't. It could kill me now. It hasn't." Veshin shifted, his compound eyes reflecting back at the camera. Humans have a history of forging anomalous bonds with apex predators. Wolves, lions, raptors. But this is a death world superpredator. Such behavior defies xenobehavioral risk models. Jace felt a thin smile twist his lips despite the fear churning in his gut. "Maybe your models aren't designed for humans." Rukor bared his fangs in silent annoyance. "Return inside immediately. Do not provoke further interaction. We will dispatch a capture team at dawn." At the word capture, the predator's eyes opened fully again, slitted pupils narrowing as it huffed a sharp, rattling growl. Its quills bristled faintly, blue plasma flickering between them like phantom lightning. Jace felt his chest tighten with panic. He reached out, pressing his palm against its neck again. "Easy," he whispered. "They don't understand. It's okay." The predator's gaze flicked down to him, the glow softening, but its quills remained half-raised, humming with threat. Veshin's voice cut sharply through the calm. "Mr. Renner, return inside. This is not a request." He ignored them. Slowly, he stepped closer until his forehead pressed lightly against the creature's massive muzzle. The scales there were warm and faintly rough under his respirator glass. It exhaled slowly, its chest deflating with a gust of sulfur-scented breath that ruffled his hair again. In that moment, under the bruised sky of Kelsar 9, Jace felt something shift. A silent agreement passed between them, ancient and wordless. Predator and prey, healer and wounded, alien and human. Something had been forged in the dark of that cave and sealed here under the silent stars. Finally, the creature pulled back, flicking its tail once in a slow arc before settling onto its haunches beside his dome, quills flattening fully against its back. It blinked slowly at him, then turned its gaze outward towards the misty jungle, as if resuming guard duty. Jace stepped back, chest tight with relief and wonder. He tapped his wrist console again. End call. Veshin's outraged clicking and Rukur's growl cut off instantly. Silence descended, broken only by the distant screech of jungle insects and the deep rumbling breaths of the apex predator beside him. He stood there for a long time watching it watch the jungle. Then he turned and re-entered his dome, sealing the door behind him with trembling hands. Inside, the air felt stale and too warm. He stripped off his suit and sank into his chair, staring blankly at the metal floor. Outside, the cameras showed the creature curling itself down onto the moss, massive tail sweeping protectively along the dome's perimeter. Its eyes remained open, scanning the mist beyond. Jace leaned back, exhaustion finally dragging at his eyelids, but sleep refused to come. His mind replayed the feel of its scales under his palm, the weight of its gaze, the way its chest rose and fell like the steady rhythm of ocean waves. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Capture teams. Council orders. Predator instincts shifting with hunger or pain. But for tonight, on this toxic alien world under a fractured moon, he wasn't alone. And for the first time since leaving Earth, he felt safer with a Death World apex predator beside him than he ever had behind steel walls and orbital protocols. Jace woke to the sound of his proximity alarms blaring in rhythmic pulses. His heart lurched into frantic motion before his eyes even opened. He scrambled out of his bunk, smacking the console with his palm to silence the klaxon. The camera feed snapped onto the main screen in harsh monochrome. The predator was still there, curled protectively against his habitat dome, but its quills were flared in an incandescent corona of flickering plasma. Its muzzle curled in a silent snarl. Beyond it, deeper into the fog, 6 heat signatures flickered through the grainy overlay. Human-sized. Armed. He felt cold wash over him, crawling from his chest down his arms to his trembling fingers. Capture team. Council authorization had come faster than he'd anticipated. His comm line chirped and Dr. Veshin's insectoid features flickered into view above his console. Mr. Renner, Veshin clicked, voice precise and devoid of empathy. Do not interfere. Extraction protocols are authorized. Subject is to be secured alive or neutralized if resistance proves hazardous. Behind him, Commander Recor's feline features loomed, expression hard with controlled anticipation. Jace's throat tightened as he watched the capture team advance, weapons raised, containment drones buzzing overhead like a swarm of mechanical hornets. He pressed his hands flat against the desk, trying to calm his breathing. You're going to kill it? He whispered. Veshin tilted his angular head. Its value dead is secondary to the threat it poses alive. Outside, the predator rose to its full height, quills flaring in radiant arcs of blue-white plasma, illuminating the dense mist in violent strobes. The capture team spread out in a crescent formation. High-frequency sonic cannons powered up with a shrill hum that cut through the dawn quiet like scalpels. The predator snarled, ears pinning flat against its massive skull as it planted its feet in the moss, tail lashing once in a slow, furious arc. Jace slammed his fist against the console. Don't do this. You don't understand what it is. Record leaned forward until only his golden eyes and curved fangs filled the screen. It is a Death World apex predator, human. That is all it needs to be. The feed cut off as the council severed the channel. Outside, containment drones deployed electrified filament nets with a crackling hiss. The predator roared, the sound so deep it vibrated the walls of his dome, rattling equipment on shelves and sending a sharp spike of adrenaline coursing through his chest. He ran to the habitat door, slamming his palm onto the manual override. The seals released with a metallic groan and sulphurous morning mist flooded into the airlock. He stumbled out barefoot onto the frost-hardened moss, blinking against the rising dawn glare. Stand down, he screamed, waving his arms at the advancing capture team. Don't shoot. It won't hurt you. They ignored him, focusing their sonic cannons on the predator as it tore through the first net with a convulsive twist of its massive shoulders. Filaments snapped and sparked against its obsidian scales, leaving glowing gouges that oozed dark iridescent blood. It roared again, tail lashing out to crush one of the containment drones into scrap, molten metal raining down onto the moss with a sizzling hiss. One of the troopers raised his weapon, a particle rifle humming with charged energy. Jace saw his finger tighten on the trigger. Without thinking, he ran forward, placing himself between the muzzle and the predator's massive chest. Don't, he shouted, voice cracking with desperation. Don't shoot. You'll kill it. The trooper hesitated, eyes wide behind his polarized visor. Get out of the way, civilian. Behind him, the predator lowered its head, quills flaring outward in an electric halo. Its emerald eyes locked onto Jace's shaking frame. For a split second, everything seemed to slow. The burning ozone tang of plasma, the shrill whine of sonic cannons powering up, the tremor of the moss beneath his bare feet. Jace turned slowly, heart hammering so hard it drowned out the alarms screaming in his suit. He met the predator's gaze and raised his hand, palm open, fingers trembling. Please, he whispered. Don't fight them. Don't make them kill you. The predator blinked slowly, pupils contracting to thin slits. Its massive chest heaved with rapid, shallow breaths, its scales flickering with residual plasma discharge. A low, rattling growl vibrated through its throat. Then, with a slowness that felt like the breaking of a tidal wave, it lowered itself onto its belly, folding its forelimbs under its chest and pressing its muzzle against the moss. The captured team froze. One of them spoke softly into the comm, voice muffled but urgent. The trooper lowered his rifle. Jace felt his legs buckle with relief, adrenaline draining out of him in a cold rush that left him trembling from head to foot. He dropped to his knees in front of the creature, ignoring the damp chill seeping into his skin. Its eyes flicked open, glowing emerald in the misty half-light. He pressed his palm against its muzzle, feeling the faint tremor running through its frame. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears burning hot behind his eyes. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to understand you." The predator exhaled softly, its breath curling around him in a sulfur-scented cloud. Its eyes never left his, even as containment drones repositioned, scanning its injured flank for safe net deployment zones. He heard the whir of their rotors, the electric crackle of charged filaments, the muffled commands of the capture team. But all he saw was its gaze. Calm, resigned, unafraid. A shout tore through the dawn. He turned to see one of the drones malfunction, its filament net sparking wildly before erupting in a burst of plasma fire. Shards of molten alloy peppered the moss. The predator flinched, a deep guttural snarl tearing from its chest as instinct surged to the forefront once more. Its quills flared in a blinding arc of plasma discharge, the glow so intense Jace's visor auto-darkened to compensate. The capture team raised their weapons in unison, particle rifles humming with lethal potential. "No!" Jace screamed, but the word was swallowed by the thunderclap of discharging rifles. Beams of incandescent energy tore through the mist, striking the predator's shoulders, flanks, and chest. Its roar rose into the dawn, primal and furious, vibrating through Jace's bones like an earthquake. Blood sprayed in dark iridescent arcs across the moss, spattering his EVA suit with smoking droplets. The predator reared onto its hind legs, towering above the dome, its quills flaring in a final incandescent corona of pure plasma rage. Then its eyes found Jace again. For a moment, its gaze softened. The glow flickered. Its massive shoulders slumped. And it fell. The impact shook the ground so violently Jace was thrown sideways onto the moss. He scrambled upright, stumbling forward until he collapsed against its massive neck. Its breathing came in ragged, hitching gasps. Blood pooled around its muzzle, staining the moss in shimmering black that reflected the rising sun in fractured rainbow hues. He pressed both palms against its scales, feeling the faint vibration of its slowing heart. Tears streamed down his cheeks, mixing with sulfur dust and blood. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." The predator exhaled one final rattling breath, warm against his trembling hands. Its eyes fluttered shut, quills dimming until only faint blue ghost light pulsed between them. Then they went dark. The dawn fell silent. Behind him, the captured team lowered their weapons. Their commander spoke softly into his comm, requesting medical analysis and biological transport. None of them approached. None of them spoke to him. Jace sat beside its massive head, fingers curled into the cooling scales, his chest hollowed out by grief so deep it felt like drowning. The rising sun burned through the sulfur mist, casting long shadows across the alien jungle. He didn't notice the orbital transmission pinging his wrist console again, didn't hear Dr. Veshin's clipped voice congratulating the team on successful neutralization. All he felt was the quiet stillness of the predator's body beneath his palms. And yet, as he leaned forward, resting his forehead against its muzzle one last time, a final flicker of warmth pulsed under his fingers. So faint it could have been his imagination. Or something deeper, older, refusing to fade completely. A promise. An echo. He closed his eyes and held it there, memorizing the feeling, until the transport teams arrived and the council severed his feed for good.